Hello students, a very good morning. I hope you all are doing well. So in last lecture we tried to cover Chaucer and we also have taken a look at the important terms and terminologies which are associated with Chaucer, right? So let me just turn the tab on and see if any one of you is online. Any queries, any questions from yesterday's class? Hi Vikas, I think you've come in the morning session and Bache, there is the profit of the live chat tab. The class will be interactive. I just would want कि आप questions shoot करें, anything that you feel like you're not understanding. Doubt clearing session का आपने पूछा है that is there any timetable for the same? तो बच्चे doubt clearing session का ऐसा होता है that most of the times they will be held on Saturdays. Alternate Saturdays होगा या every Saturday होगा, उसके बारे में आप लोग को update कर दिया जाएगा. You can ask the batch coordinators for the same thing. Secondly, जो doubt clearing sessions होते हैं उसके लिए आप लोग के मेल पे किसी तरीके से links आ जाते हैं, ठीक है? So any doubts regarding the doubt clearing sessions as in how they are going to be taken up, हम लोग तो लेंगे, ठीक है? जो time होगा, जो day होगा, वो आप लोग को थ्रू द लिंक जो है जूम सेशन का लिंक आप लोग के पास आ जाएगा ऑन योर मेल एंड ऑल, राइट? यू कैन क्लिक दैट लिंक ऑन द डे एंड द टाइम, ठीक है, जब आपका डाउट क्लियरिंग सेशन हो, ठीक है विकास? तो द क्लासेस विल बी इंटरैक्टिव एंड मैं तो पहले दिन से ही कह रही हूँ दैट आई वुड वांट दैट अगर आप लोग पार्टिसिपेट करो. लेट मी जस्ट वेट फॉर अ कपल ऑफ मिनट्स इफ यू शो अप. I will just arrange my notes because today आज की क्लास में हम लोग I hope आपने general prologue कर लिया होगा. The tales which are associated with the general prologue, they are finished. In today's class we are going to deal with Canterbury Tales. We are going to read and write somewhere or the other the basic description of the different characters which are there. ठीक है, उनकी थोड़ी सी tales जो है, tales का तो पढ़ना important है ही. Character descriptions we will also write. And then we will move forward with the other contemporaries of Chaucer. ठीक है, कल मैंने criticism लिखवा दिया था. कल की क्लास में I have made you guys note down certain things about Chaucer, who said what about Chaucer, so on and so forth. So let's just go there. हम लोग history अच्छे से कर चुके हैं. And then I made you guys write about the 3 period of Chaucer's life, as in what was he writing and during what point of time. Because if you are here, please let me know through a message, good morning, a greeting or something like that. Okay? So that I know that you are watching the video. I don't know if you watch my class on the recorded wala part. Not sure of that. If that's the case, I think वो doubt clearing session में clear हो जाएगा कि आप अगर आओगे तो आप मेरे को बता दोगे of course that आप कब क्लासेस ज्वाइन करते हो, मेरी क्लासेस कब देखते हो. ऑल राइट. चलो, तो कल हमने चौसर के 3 periods majorly करे. That his life was divided in 3 major phases. He used to write in 3 different languages and 3 different phases were there where we see the influence of first of all the French tours that he had undertaken, right? जैसे उसमें the Book of Duchess, which is also known with the name and by the name, the Death of Blanche. Then we have Roman de la Rose, या Roman of the Rose, which was a translation of a French romance. We tried to talk about a small poem ABC, The Complaint of Mars and The Complaint unto Pity, right? And then Italian phase mein, we had seen that Chaucer was much more influenced by figures like Dante, Boccaccio, Petrarch, right? And he wrote several works taking the influence of the Italian tour and the Italian, and it is even said that Chaucer jo hai, it is even possible that he would have met Boccaccio, Petrarch and Dante, right? So we see that Annalida and Archite, the Parliament of Faust, Troilus and Cresside, House of Fame, Legend of Good Women, and Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy was one such work that he translated. The other things were there which were having some sort of Italian influence on Chaucer. Okay? Then we have the major influential work, the magnum opus of Chaucer, which is known as the Canterbury Tales. ठीक है, तो कैंटरबरी टेल्स में हम देखते हैं that it was first of all it is somewhere or the other affected and influenced by Boccaccio's work Decameron से ये इंस्पायर हुआ था एंड कैंटरबरी टेल्स इज अ टेल यू नो जहां पे अनफिनिश्ड टेल्स हमें मिलती हैं जो भी चीजें हो रही थी. So I told you in the last class only that of course the people who were going to the pilgrimage to the shrine of Saint Thomas Becket, what were they doing? They met at the inn which is known by the name the Tabard Inn, and they say that this idea is proposed that when till the time we reach to the shrine of Saint Thomas Becket, what will we be doing? Each one of us will be telling 2 stories on the way to the shrine and from the way back to the shrine to Tabard Inn again. ठीक है, तो totally एक character जो है, he or she will tell 4 stories each, 2 on their way to the shrine, 2 on their way back to the Tabard Inn, right? Is it clear, Vikas? ठीक है, तो इनका जो जर्नी स्टार्ट होगा, इट विल स्टार्ट फ्रॉम द टबार्ड इन and each pilgrim will have to tell 4 tales in total, 2 while going, 2 while coming back, right? And then this was the homework that I gave you. This was the homework that I gave you. Roman de la Rose, Troilus and Cresside, Parliament Faust, The Legend of Good Women, The Book of the Duchess and The House of Fame. ठीक है, मैंने आप लोग को ऑलरेडी चीजें बता दी हैं कि these 2 are the websites that you guys should be referring to for your preparation. या ये है एक और साइट है which is known as literarydevices.net. ठीक है, तो ये सारी जो चीजें हैं ये आप लोग को यहां से कलेक्ट करनी है. द टर्म्स, नॉट द वर्क्स, द टर्म्स. वर्क्स के लिए मैंने आपको ऑलरेडी आई हैव गिवन यू द नेम्स ऑफ 3-4 वेबसाइट्स. द इंट्रोडक्शन एंड ऑल यू विल रीड फ्रॉम विकिपीडिया, द अदर थिंग्स फ्रॉम ग्रेट सेवर, लिटचार्ट्स, शमूप एटसेट्रा. फिर भी मैंने चौसर के वर्क्स जो मेजर वर्क है कैंटरबरी टेल्स, उसका हैंड आउट अपलोड करवा दिया था. I think it has been uploaded. Let me just see. And it is a live class, बच्चे. It is a live class. The time is around 11:38 a.m. Just trying to tell you that it's not a recorded session here. कुछ थोड़ा real time की वजह से फर्क होगा. Not beyond that. right? So the first work, let's just write something about it. The first work by the name The Book of the Duchess. Wait, I have so many notes here, I'll have to arrange them first of all. Right? So the very first completed work that we see here, we are going to talk about Chaucer's first dream vision, that is by the name, that goes by the name. We see that. Let's just move forward. So the very first work that we are going to write certain things about is The Book of the Duchess. The document for the same has been uploaded for you all, right? So I really would want that you guys get a printout, highlight, however you want to read it, as मैं बार बार कहती रहती हूँ ये चीज, right? So here we see that it is Chaucer's first dream vision. Chaucer's first dream vision it is based on French dream visions, right? So we see that here, seeing this work, जो Eustache Deschamps ने, we had written that thing in yesterday's class that Eustache Deschamps calls Chaucer the great translator, le grand translateur, right? So he has called Chaucer based on this particular work as well. So Chaucer cannot sleep, so he reads these things and he reads this line. ठीक है, तो मैंने आपको बताया था नेट क्वेश्चन ये आया हुआ था, right? The very first thing that he wrote was the Roman de la Rose, which was a translation of the work, right? उसको आप handout से ही पढ़ोगे. Second work, which is somewhere or the other important, क्योंकि एक दो बार पूछा गया नेट में, that is the Book of the Duchess, the Death of Blanche, right? It is known by the other name, as I told you in yesterday's class as well. It is also known as the Death of Blanche. ठीक है, डेथ ऑफ ब्लॉन्च के नाम से भी जाना जाता है. ब्लॉन्च कौन थी? जॉन ऑफ गॉन्स वाइफ. शी वाज जॉन ऑफ गॉन्स वाइफ. So we see this thing happening here. It is earliest of Chaucer's major poems. Blanche for the lady, the Duchess, the Blanche of Lancaster. क्योंकि जो हमारे जॉन ऑफ गॉन थे, he was the Duke of Lancaster, right? So here, this much is important. It is a long prologue. It is a long prologue and it is trying to depict the, some sort of sense, because here there is this one knight who is bereaving, जो मातम मना रहा है about the death of a very beautiful woman whom he calls his beloved, bereaving the death of his beloved, whom he calls what, जिसकी डिस्क्रिप्शन वो किस चौसर को कैसे बता रहे हैं, how is Blanche been described in the work, good, fair, white, good, fair, white, beloved, she has died, and the night, and यहाँ पे night किसको signify कर रहा है, let me just tell you, the night is signifying हमारा John of Gaunt को. On the other hand, the Duchess here is being signified by the knight's beloved. Knight की जो beloved है, knight's beloved, that is the Duchess. That is the Duchess. ठीक है? So हम लोग ये चीज देखते हैं. Right? The poet here in this work is basically unable to sleep because unko bhi some sort of depression is there. And when he falls asleep, this is one important point. What is the poet reading while falling asleep? Poet reads Ovid while falling asleep. सोते हुए, सोने से पहले, he cannot sleep properly, so he starts reading Ovid. तो जो poet है, what is a dream vision? Dream vision is when a poet visualizes, एक vision में चले जाते हैं सो के, and then when he wakes up, he writes a poem about that. So there is this one thing, ये बताया गया है कि पोएट जो है वो खुद सैड है, डिप्रेस्ड है, तो वो ओविड पढ़ते पढ़ते सो जाते हैं. नाउ व्हाट हैपेंस इज दैट व्हेन ही स्लीप्स ही इज समवेयर और द अदर टेकन टू अ हंटिंग पार्टी. व्हेन ही इज टेकन टू अ हंटिंग पार्टी, व्हाट हैपेंस नाउ, अगर आपने ये पढ़ा होगा ना, बुक ऑफ द डचेस का होमवर्क पढ़ा होगा, तो आप लोग इजीली सेंस बना रहे होंगे, क्योंकि यहाँ पे चीजें रिवाइज होंगी. इफ आई विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट द वर्क्स हियर, आई विल बी गिविंग यू सम सॉर्ट ऑफ एक्स्ट्रा इंफॉर्मेशन और द रिविजन पार्ट. ठीक है? तो आई डोंट वांट यू गाइस टू जस्ट बी कमिंग अप हियर एंड थिंकिंग कि सब कुछ ही प्रोवाइड हो जाएगा. यहाँ पे प्रोवाइड होगा, लेकिन जो मैंने आपको बोला है, द थिंग्स विच आर अपलोडेड, द थिंग्स दैट यू आर सपोज्ड टू डू, दैट इज समथिंग जो आपको करनी पड़ेगी. ठीक है? कमिंग बैक अगेन, when the poet sleeps, the poet falls asleep, he is taken to a vision, he sees a vision where he is taken to a hunting party. And when he is taken to a hunting party, what does he see there? What does he see there? He sees a knight in black. One knight who is wearing black. अब आप इस चीज को याद कैसे रख सकते हो कि क्वेश्चन पूछा अगर कि नाइट ने कौन से रंग के कपड़े पहने थे? How will you memorize? Because of the fact we can memorize it by this thing only, that black in Christianity is considered a color for mourning, for bereavement. So here we see the knight wearing black, the knight wearing the black color, right? So we see that happening. He now starts describing, the knight now starts describing the knight starts describing the beauty of his beloved. अपने beloved की beauty के बारे में बात करने लग जाते हैं, right? Later on, what happens? That we see that the hunters reappear on the scene and we hear the bell strike 12 and suddenly the dreamer wakes up. So यहाँ एक चीज और ऐड कर लो, while falling asleep he is reading Ovid, of course, and then sees a vision in his dream about a hunting party. about a hunting party. ठीक है, this much only is important for the death of Blanche or the book of the Duchess. Right, then we have the next work which is known by the name The House of Fame. This is also some sort of छोटा सा ही work, लेकिन हमें इसके बारे में भी कुछ लिखना है. We need to write something about it. The House of Fame is again a poem. First of all, what's the genre? A poem, and majorly writers were writing in the form of poetry. I told you already that 14th century was an era where the genre, the prominent genre was poetry, right? So here, Chaucer again writes a poem, right? And it is divided into 3 books. This particular work is divided into 3 books. This particular work is divided into 3 books, and it is also a dream vision. It is also a dream vision, मतलब poet सोएगा कुछ चीज सोचते हुए या कुछ, और उनकी dream में कुछ होगा, and then he will report that up later on. So what happens here is the story. Upon falling asleep, the poet somewhere or the other finds his own self in a glass temple. ठीक है, तो एक glass temple में वो अपने आप को मिलते हैं, देखते हैं. When the poet falls asleep, I'll just narrate the story. You guys would have read it. You guys might have the work with you here on your document as well. Right? So here we have other important points as well. इसीलिए handouts भी important है. Where I have put that it was after the influence of Dante. Under the influence of Dante, with the influence of Dante's Divine Comedy. तो यहाँ पे influence किसका दिखता है हमें? Influenced by Dante's Divine Comedy. Dante's Divine Comedy. And it is also a work which is unfinished. This is also unfinished work. The poet falls asleep and he finds, this is what I am reading from your handout only. The poet falls asleep and dreamt that he was in a temple of glass, where he saw depicted Aeneas and Dido. The dream moves on to deal more briefly with other parts of the Aeneid. ठीक है, तो Aeneid के बारे में भी बात है. यहाँ पे उनको क्या मिलता है? The poet finds himself in the temple of glass. Now when he finds himself in the temple of glass, what's the other thing that he finds? He finds an eagle. एक bird उनको मिलता है who will serve as his guide, जो उनके guide बनेंगे through the house of fame. The eagle explains philosophically and at length the palace of fame, right? That how fame, अगर कोई इंसान famous होता है, अगर किसी इंसान के पास fame होता है, तो how things work in arbitrary ways for his own self. This is what he talks about, right? The eagle departs and Chaucer enters the palace of fame, that is rumor, where he sees the famous of both the classical and biblical lore. तो उनको वहां पे ना अलग अलग statues दिखते हैं. जब चौसर को ईगल कहीं पे लेके जाते हैं, राइट, सो ही फाइंड्स दैट देयर आर व्हाट, देयर आर डिफरेंट डिफरेंट थिंग्स व्हिच आर देयर, राइट, सो ऑफ कोर्स वो अपने आप को भी देखते हैं कि इन द सेंस अपने आप ही देखते हैं कि आसपास जो भी लोगों की इमेजेस या स्कल्पचर्स ही इज व्यूइंग, दे आर ऑफ द पीपल हु आर रियली फेमस, राइट. Towards the end of the poem comes a vision of bearers of false tidings, shipmen, pilgrims, pardoners, and messengers whose confusion seemed to be about to be resolved by the appearance of a man of great autocrat. But there the poem ends. So this is a poem which is unfinished. End में हमको देखने के लिए मिलता है, चौसर कहते हैं कि कोई एक इंसान आएगा, सब लोग इकट्ठे होते हैं एंड में, and Chaucer says that there will come a man great autocrat, AUCTOCRITE, will come. This is what Chaucer says. But here the poem ends. The man does not arrive. So we are left with nothing. Hence the poem is unfinished. Right? इस poem में हमें एक चीज देखने के लिए मिलती है कि Chaucer tries to explain that how any poet can somewhere or the other influence the way people are being looked at later on in life, right? He contemplates the role of the poet in reporting the lives of the famous. How any poet can report the lives of the famous people. And the tales and how those tales about those famous people can be told. That is why the name of the work is The House of Fame. ठीक है, तो ये भी ड्रीम विजन है. इज इट क्लियर? तो ये वर्क कब तक लिखा गया था? अराउंड 1379 1380. डचेस 1369 के आसपास लिखा गया था. द बुक ऑफ द डचेस 1369 के आसपास लिखा गया था. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट वर्क वी हैव इज द पार्लियामेंट ऑफ फाउल्स. Fowls, it is written as fowls as well or it is written as fowls as well. ठीक है, तो आपको घबराना नहीं है if you see some other sort of spelling in the examination. It is also a dream poem. Around 699 lines are there. ठीक है, approximate 700 lines are there. And it is written in the form of rhyme royale, जो हमने कल मीटर करा था. Remember, we did a meter in yesterday's class, which was known as rhyme royale, A B A B B C C. Seven line stanza, right? A 7-line stanza. It is written in the form of rhyme royale. Now, what is this thing? It's a dream vision. And one thing which is important is that we also see here first mention of Saint Valentine's Day. इसी तरीके से एक चीज, एक पॉइंटर यहाँ पे भी ऐड कर लो. हाउस ऑफ फेम में भी चौसर ने हमें दो नए वर्ड्स दिए थे इंग्लिश के, which for the very first time appeared in Chaucer's work The House of Fame. The terms like galaxy and Milky Way. Galaxy and the second term the Milky Way. Both of these are said to appear in the house of faith. These terms. These terms. It is said to be, the next जो work हम लिख रहे थे, the Parliament of Fowls, it is said to be written, this work is said to be written as an allegory of the betrothal, ये bracket में लिख लेना, believed to be an allegory of the betrothal, Mangni, Sagai, betrothal, Roka, whatever you want to call it, betrothal of King Richard II with Anne of Bohemia. हमने करे थे ना किंग रिचर्ड II, 9 साल का जो किंग था, किंग रिचर्ड II, who got mentally unstable after the death of his wife Anne of Bohemia. तो जब Anne of Bohemia और इनकी शादी होने वाली थी, उससे पहले जो भी मंगनी, सगाई, रोका जो भी होता है, किंग रिचर्ड एंड इनके ऊपर एक एलिगरी बोलते हैं, इसको कहा जाता है. And we all know that Saint Valentine's Day is a special day for the lovers, of course, 14th of February, right? So we see that happening, the mention of Saint Valentine's Day in this particular work. And the poem, how does the poem begin? Begins with the poet reading a work which is known as reading a work which was known as Cicero का, Cicero was a writer, Cicero's work which was known as Somnium Copious, Somnium और the dream of Scipio लिख सकते हो आप इसको, the dream of Scipio, the dream of Scipio was the name of the work which the poet was reading while starting the poem. तो इसमें क्या होता है बेसिकली, इस पोम में ये होता है जब जो पोएट जो है वो सो जाता है, ही ड्रीम्स ऑफ द पोएट ड्रीम्स ऑफ स्कीपियो अफ्रीकेनस, स्कीपियो अफ्रीकेनस के बारे में ड्रीम करता है. एंड व्हेन ही फॉल्स asleep ही मीट्स स्कीपियो अफ्रीकेनस राइट इन हिज ड्रीम. एंड क्या होता है, जो ये स्कीपियो अफ्रीकेनस है, अफ्रीकेनस उनको वीनस, वीनस कौन है, रोमन, उसमें रोमन और ग्रीक मिथोलॉजी में जो वीनस है, शी इज द गॉड ऑफ लव, गॉडेस ऑफ लव. ठीक है, तो ऐसा होता है कि जब वो द पोएट फॉल्स asleep एंड ही ड्रीम्स ऑफ अफ्रीकेनस, अफ्रीकेनस उनके माइंड में आते हैं, अफ्रीकेनस उनको गॉडेस वीनस के वहां पे टेम्पल पे लेके जाते हैं, राइट, टेम्पल पे लेके जाते हैं. एंड लेटर ऑन वहां से पास करते करते द पोएट इज टेकन टू अ पार्लियामेंट, where the birds are choosing their mates. After crossing Venus's temple, the poet reaches to a parliament, reaches to a parliament where the birds are choosing their own mates. ठीक है, अपने अपने mates को choose कर रहे हैं. Now what happens is that we see that there are three tarsal eagles. Three tarsal eagles. The three tarsal eagles make their case for the hand of a formal eagle. तो three tarsal eagles हैं जो चाहते हैं कि उनको एक formal eagle मिल जाए. ठीक है, they ask for, उसका रिश्ता मांगते हैं eagle का, right? Until the birds of lower estates begin to protest and launch into a comic parliamentary debate. Which nature herself, यहाँ पे nature जो है personify करी गई है, nature herself finally ends this debate. None of the tarsals wins the formal. Formal कौन सी होती है? Formal होती थी जो फीमेल ईगल्स होती हैं, उनको हम फॉर्मल ईगल्स बोलते हैं. जो टर्सल होती हैं ये मेल ईगल्स होती हैं. तो थ्री मेल ईगल्स जो है एक फॉर्मल का हाथ मांग रहे हैं. दे आर सेइंग दैट वी वांट टू बी विद दिस पर्टिकुलर ईगल, राइट? सो नेचर एंड्स द डिबेट. तो नेचर क्या कहती है? नेचर इस फॉर्मल को कह देती है दैट यू पुट योर डिसीजन फॉर द नेक्स्ट ईयर, कीप योर डिसीजन सेफ फॉर द नेक्स्ट ईयर. दिस ईयर डोंट चूज एनी पार्टनर. क्यों एक साल के लिए डाला? क्योंकि जो फॉर्मल्स होती हैं वो एक साल के बाद, एक साल तक अपना जो है दे कैन गेट प्रेग्नेंट एंड प्रोड्यूस बेबीज. ऑन द अदर हैंड ले एग्स बेसिकली. On the other hand, the males are sexually active after 2 years and all, right? So they say that the males can wait for you for 1 year, you wait for your own self for 1 year, first of all, right? So the dream ends, जो ये dream vision है, ये जो dream है, ends with the season. कौन सा season आ जाता है? Summer. Summer season पे the dream literally ends, right? The dreamer awakes, he is unsatisfied, returns to his books, hoping still to learn the thing for which he was seeking. क्योंकि एक चीज इंपॉर्टेंट है यहाँ पे, जब वो सिसिरो की ड्रीम ऑफ स्कोपियो पढ़ रहे होते हैं, he wants to find the poet, wants to find an answer to a certain thing. एक चीज है जो उनको, जिसके लिए उनको जवाब चाहिए था, and he wants the answer to that certain thing. That's why he starts reading the book and he falls asleep and then he goes, the entire thing happens, right? So this is the dream that we talk about, the dream vision as Parliament of Fouts. Right? Then we have the next work, Troilus and Cressida. Wait. Troilus and Cressida. शॉर्ट में करेंगे इसको. This is the very first book where we see Chaucer first used rhyme royale in this work, right? This has been considered and called, has been called a novel in verse, a novel in verse, and it is comprising of, how many books are there? 5 books. 5 books are there. This is an important point to note down. So how many books are there? 5 books are there. You will read it from your work. First and second book में क्या होता है? In book 1 and 2, what happens is that Troilus discovers and woos Cresside. T I am writing for Troilus and C for Cresside. So he discovers, he finds Cresside and he woos her. Woos Cresside. Troilus finds and discovers Cresside and woos her. In the third book, sorry, in the second book, third book, the climate is such that when he wants to be with, this is the third book that I'm talking about. Third book is somewhere or the other climatic. In what sense I'm trying to talk about? The couple here celebrate their love. तो बहुत अच्छा चल रहा है अभी तक. The couple celebrates their love. This happens in book number 3. Now what happens in book number 4 is both of them get separated. Both are separated from one another. And in book number 5, these are the notes that I'm asking you guys, जो मैंने notes बनाए हैं उसमें से, ठीक है, इसलिए चीजें और क्रक्स में आ रही हैं. Then we have last book, which is known as book number 5. In book number 5, what we see is that both of them are apart and their state is somewhere or the other अच्छी नहीं है. Right? In book 5, they are apart and उनकी स्टेट के बारे में दिखा रहे हैं कि how are they suffering? How are they suffering without one another? So Chaucer, this is a PYQ that I'm going to give you guys here. Chaucer took the source of this work. The source of this work is Boccaccio's work. Boccaccio's work Il Filostrato. Boccaccio's work IL, then the next word Filostrato. Il Filostrato, right? Il Filostrato. That's all that we want to know about Troilus and Cresside. इसके अलावा बाकी आपके उसमें होगा handouts में. I'm pretty sure about that. Troilus and Cresside, हाँ जी है आपके Italian period में. Then we have The Legend of Good Women. And this work, Troilus and Cresside, 1388. This work has been dedicated to, as Chaucer puts it, O moral gover. ये question PYQ है. I'll just put a star on the things which I told you were PYQ. ये PYQ है, ठीक है, और हमारा ये PYQ है. ठीक है. Then we have the next work known as The Legend of Good Women. This work was written from the year 1370s, right? 1370s to 1380s. Mind you, there is no proper and sure date of Chaucer's work, so to say, but वो century में fit in करते हैं, ठीक है? If we go by the exact date that this particular book provides, it's 1387, but we are still not sure of that. ठीक है, चलिए आगे बढ़ते हैं. और चौसर का कभी as such chronology नहीं आया है. Here in this work we see that Chaucer has used and introduced the heroic couplet for the very first time. कल हम लोग ने करा था what is a heroic couplet? Two lines which are coupled together where the end rhyme जो है वो चल रही है. cat bat, अगर end में cat आ रहा है तो last line, second line का last word भी rhyme करेगा first line से, right? Heroic couplet first used here in this work, The Legend of Good Women. How many tales are there? We see there is a prologue. There is a prologue and 9 tales. 9th was started. How many tales did he plan to write though? He wanted to write, original plan आप लिख सकते हो. The original plan was to write 19 tales, but only these much were completed. ये जो थी complete थी, 9 start करी थी, तो eventually 9 tales are there. एंड जैसे ट्रॉयलस एंड क्रिसीड में उन्होंने क्रिसीड को एक नेगेटिव इमेज में दिखाया था, इस वर्क में वो इसीलिए विमेन की स्पेसिफिकली लिख रहे हैं बिकॉज ही वांट्स टू आस्क फॉर एन अपॉलजी टू व्हाटएवर थिंग्स ही हैड डन इन हिज पास्ट, व्हाटएवर थिंग्स ही हैड डन इन हिज पास्ट. तो हुआ द वंस जिनके बारे में स्टोरीज हैं यहाँ पे, वी विल जस्ट नोट दोज थिंग्स डाउन हियर. किन किन की स्टोरीज दिखाई गई हैं हमें यहाँ पे. Who are the women here? Cleopatra, Thisbe, Dido, Hypsipyle, HIP, SIP, LE, Mede, Lucrece, Ariadne, Philomela, Phyllis and Hypermnestra. These are the tales of the women that he had written and told. And this work I told you already as well only. This work is a work which was also incomplete due to these factors. In factors ki wajah se this work was incomplete, right? We see that. And what is the form? We have discussed that as a term. This is a पैलिनोड, क्योंकि ये यहाँ पे माफी मांग रहे हैं हाउ इन्होंने जो है अपने पुराने वर्क जिसका नाम था ट्रोइलस इन क्रिसीड, हाउ ही हैज पोर्ट्रेड और डिपिक्टेड क्रिसीड इन हिज वर्क. All right. Because you're not here now. Till the time you guys note it up, I will just ask for. Now, moving to the Canterbury Tales. Moving to the Canterbury Tales. Was influenced by Boccaccio's Decameron. This is what we have already noted down. The 29 pilgrims meet at the Bard Inn and 23 of them tell stories. These are certain facts. Please note them down. There are 24 stories which are told, and ye question, this is a PYQ that I am giving you in here, that this question has been asked, like which two of the, which two stories in Canterbury's Tales are told by Chaucer. So it is the tale of Topus, and the tale of Melibea or Meliboeus. And I told you to note these things down as well. Knight's Tale se begin hoti hai and ends with the Parson's Tale. Even though the work is, of course, most remarkable work, but it is an incomplete piece. And it ends with the retraction that we are also going to read. It ends with the retraction for the unworthy and vulgar parts of the book, क्योंकि इसमें fabulou भी है जिनमें sexual चीजें बताई गई हैं. तो Chaucer wants to apologize for the same things. Note these things down. Oof. These 29 pilgrims are there, 31 there are in total, including the host. What is the name of the host? अगर आपने पढ़ा होगा तो आपको पता होगा. The name of the host is Harry Bailey and the poet. अगर इनको भी जोड़ दे तो हमारे पास कितने जाने बन जाते हैं? 31 pilgrims. Oh, sorry. So you see the pilgrims here. This is Chaucer, right? This is Chaucer. This is the prioress. बहुत सारे वो हैं इसमें. The lady of Bath, right? The wife of Bath. So again, this thing is also important. अपर क्लास को कौन रिप्रेजेंट करता है? मिडिल क्लास में अपर एंड लोअर को दो डिवाइड करा है. लोअर क्लास में वर्चुअस एंड इमोरल, क्योंकि देयर विल बी पीपल लाइक द पार्डनर, even though the pardoner's job is to pardon for the sins the people have committed, but pardoner की टेल में हमें ये देखने के लिए मिलता है कि he himself is someone who is immoral, right? So note this thing down that from the upper class we have the knight, squire, prioress, monk and friar. From the upper middle class we have merchant, clerk of Oxford. This is really important as a description of his man of law, Franklin, 5 guildsmen. Lower middle class में we have cook, shipman, doctor of physique, wife of Bath. And then we have lower class में जो लोग virtuous हैं, who are righteous, yeoman, parson, plowman. And who are immoral, miller, manciple, reeve, summoner and pardoner. Note these down, only then we will proceed. चले? So I will read something, but yeah, this we have already written, right? This is from where the general prologue starts. When that April with his showers sowed, the drought of March hath pierced to the root. I will read the modernized version, some version, so that you guys understand prologue में क्या बात करी गई है. Modernized version पढ़ूंगी. When the sweet showers of April have pierced the dry soil of March down to the roots and bathed every vein in moisture, so that from its vital part the flowers are born. When the west wind has also breathed upon the tender shoots in every glade and field with its sweet breath, or the spring sun has completed half of its course through the sign of the rain, and little birds that sleep all night with eyes open for the dawn make their music because their hearts are so thrilled by nature. Then people become anxious to go on a pilgrimage, and farmers to seek strange shores of distant saints, famous in many lands and shrines, above all, right? Lands and above all from the ends of every country in England. They proceed to Canterbury to seek the holy blessed martyr, Saint Thomas, who has helped them when they were sick. One day in that season, as I stayed at the Tabardan in the Southwark, ready to go with devout heart on my pilgrimage to Canterbury, there happened to come to the inn in the evening as many as 29 a party, mixed company, whom chance had brought together, and they were all pilgrims who planned to ride to Canterbury. This is what he says in the lines that we talk of. Let me just open it here. Where were the files? Yeah. This is what is told in the general prologue की introductory phase में कि मैं जब था, जब अप्रैल में showers जो है वो हो जाते हैं and it has pierced to the roots, people start having that sort of, and the birds are chirping, the sun has completed its half course, some people start feeling anxious and they feel like they need to go to a pilgrimage. And that is when the poet says that I was in the Tabardan to go to a pilgrimage to Saint Thomas Becket, जो Canterbury में रहते थे, right, who is a martyr now. I want to pay homage to him, and there I meet 29 people, mixed company, he says, right. In Southwark as a Tabar as I lay, ready to go on my pilgrimage to Canterbury with a very devout spirit. At night had come into that hostelry, well, 9 and 20 in a company. 9 and 20 means 29 people have come of various sorts of people by chance fallen in fellowship, and they were all pilgrims. 29 के 29 जो भी आए थे, they were all pilgrims. They also wanted to go to the shrine of Saint Thomas Becket, right, who intended to ride toward Canterbury. The bedrooms and the stables were spacious, and we were well accommodated in the best way, right. So there in this particular general prologue, we get an introduction as in how Chaucer tries to introduce people, and he tries to say that general prologue में वो इतनी बात बता देते हैं, ठीक है. Now let's just move forward with the very first member here. Come back. Tabard in and woke up early in the next morning to set off on their journey. Before continuing the tale, the narrator declares his intent to list and describe each member. So narrator, यानी कि जो poet है, he says that now before beginning the tale, I will just describe the 29 pilgrims, the 29 members who have come to the Tabardan to visit the Canterbury, area. So he goes on and he describes. Let's just move forward with the description of the night first of all. The night here the narrator begins his character portrait. So first of all, tale bhi sabse pehle in the Canterbury Tales, the very first tale is told by a knight. The first description that also occurs is of the knight, right? That is what we see. The narrator begins his character portraits with the knight. In the narrator's eyes, the knight is the noblest of the pilgrims, embodying military prowess, loyalty, honor, generosity, and good manners. He conducts himself in a polite and mild fashion, never saying an unkind word about anyone. This is what he talks about कि knight की description देते हैं. He is brave and wise. I will just read something for you all. Right? He is dressed in a ribbon. जिपॉन क्या होता था? काइंड ऑफ अ ट्यूनिक, ठीक है, जिसकी लंबी लंबी बाजू में एक ट्यूनिक पहना हुआ है उन्होंने. स्टेन्ड विद रस्ट फ्रॉम हिज चेन मेल बिकॉज ही केम स्ट्रेट फ्रॉम अनदर जर्नी. तो नाइट की डिस्क्रिप्शन में वो ये बोलते हैं. लेट्स जस्ट गो बैक एंड रीड सम ऑफ द डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ द नाइट हियर. यहां से स्टार्ट होती है. A knight there was, and a worthy man, who from the time that he first began to ride out, he loved chivalry. तो जो हमारा knight है वो क्या है? Chivalrous है, right? He loved chivalry, truth and honor, fidelity and good reputation, generosity and courtesy. He was very worthy in his lord's war. क्योंकि वो knight है तो knights की duty क्या होती थी? अपने lords के लिए fights पे जाना, battles पे जाना. So the knight here is someone who has gone to very many wars for his lord, and for that he had written, no man farther as well in Christendom as in heathen lands. कोई भी उनके अलावा इतना नहीं लड़ा है battles में, इतना नहीं इधर उधर गया है, and was ever honored for his worthiness. So the knight, how is he being described? He is being described as a man who is worthy, right? He was at Alexandria when it was won. He had sat very many times in the place of honor. He had gone to Prussia, in Russia, right? No Christian man of his rank so often would go, right, or would have campaigned to such an area. So, come back again here and we will write more things about the knight here and his description, correct? Oh God. Yeah. So, the knight is the member of the household group. He has come with his son, who is a squire, and his yeoman, right? He has come. Who is with him? Knight के साथ? Squire है. And the second person is the yeoman. The second person is the yeoman. The knight has been shown as someone who is considered to be the epitome of chivalry. He is worthy enough. He is a chivalrous man. He was a very powerful, genteel knight. So, he has been shown as someone who is chivalrous, full of chivalry, right? He is full of chivalry. He is one such person who is very worthy, who loves truth and honor, as we have read in the general prologue as well. Modest, who is modest as well. He loves modesty as well. These are the traits of the knight that we see. And he has been to around 15 holy wars, or we know them as the Crusades. He has fought in 15 holy wars or the Crusades. And the jippon that he is wearing, his jippon or tunic, is stained with rust, which is showing that he has come yet another from another journey. Stained with some sort of oil or rust shows that he has come from another journey as well. Another journey. Okay? Tales you will read on your own. Then we have the second character who is known as the squire, who is the son of the knight. First of all, इसको लिख लो. क्यों नहीं आई अभी तक? Then we have the second person who is described by Chaucer. His name is, he is known as a squire. He is known as a squire, right? Who is the knight's son, 20 years old, very handsome, curly hair, right? These are some of the descriptions. You should note it from here. And he is wearing a short gown, medium height का है वो, short gown with sleeves which are embroidered. I have जानबूझ के emboldened the words here so that you know that these are some of the features of the squire here, any character. He loves playing the flute and singing along with that, right? He loves singing and playing the flute, and he is obsessed with something which is known as love and romance. He is also modest and happy to serve people, and is a dutiful son. And is a dutiful son. So we will read something from here about the squire. Yeah. With him there was his son, a young squire, a lover and a lively bachelor. Lively here in the sense of him being someone who is very lusty, right? Someone who is very lusty. With locks curled, so he had curly hair, and as if they had been laid in a curler. He was 20 years of age. मैंने आपको लिखवा दिया ये चीज already. He was 20 years of age and was of moderate height. Wonderfully agile and of great strength. Right? In hope to stand in his lady's good graces, he has fought अपनी जो लड़ाइयां अपने पापा की तरह, he has fought many battles, but it was just to win the love and praise of the women that he was surrounded by. उनके सामने नंबर बनाने के लिए he used to fight, right? He was embroidered as if it were a mead, full of fresh flowers, white and red. Singing, he was of fluting all the day. I told you already his talent, his favorite thing to do was singing and playing the flute, right? And ye cheez, this line has been asked. He was as fresh as is the month of May. Note it down. Note it down. The night has been shown as fresh as is the month of May. This is your PYQ. who has been described as fresh as the month of May? It's the night. It's the night who has been described as fresh as the month of May. ठीक है? His gown was short with long white sleeves. We have written that he was wearing a short gown with long sleeves, right? Courteous he was, lowly and serviceable, and carved before his father at the table. That means he was a very good son कि अपने पापा को अगर अपना meat carved चाहिए होता था, तो he was one such child, he was one such son to do and perform that son wali duties for his own father, right? So he was one such person. Then we have the third character here, yeoman. He was accompanying the knight and the squire. He was accompanying the knight and the squire, right? He was a free-born servant and carries, he wears green from head to toe. This is something, ये भी आपका PYQ है. Who wears green from head to toe? It's the yeoman who is wearing green from head to toe and carries an enormous bow and beautifully feathered arrows. ये दो लाइंस में ही आता है, तो यही चीज पूछी गई थी नेट में, राइट? People think because he is wearing green entirely, he is thought of as a person who is a forester. He is dressed ostentatiously, all in green, and he has an image of Saint Christopher emblazoned on his chest. Emblazoned on his chest. And he has a hunting horn again on a green strap. A hunting horn on a green strap. So we will read something after you're done noting things down from here, or maybe highlighting things from your notes. So let's just read about the yeoman now. The yeoman had, the knight had the yeoman and no more servants at that time, for it pleased him to travel. And he, the yeoman, was clad in coat and hood of green. As I told you already कि ऊपर से नीचे तक वो green ही पहन के रखते हैं. And then a sheaf of peacock arrows, bright and keen. Under his belt, he carried very properly some sort of equipment. His arrows did not fall short because of the dropping feathers which were there, drooping feathers which were there. And in his hand he carried a mighty bow. हमने लिखा है ना कि एक बहुत बड़ी bow भी carry करते हैं ये, right? So he had a brown visage. Visage means face. So please note these two things down as well. Sheaf of peacock arrows, right? Bright and keen. He is having what? He is having, his face is brown, brown face, then a sheaf of peacock feathers. Peacock feathers पूछ सकते हैं, तो आप तुक्का भी लगा सकते हो यहाँ पे, क्योंकि यहाँ पे yeoman is also and already showing his so much love for green. So he is wearing head to toe, he is wearing green. So sheaf of peacock, peacock color is somewhere or the other near greenish only, no? So peacock feathers are for the yeoman. ठीक है? Then we have the prioress. Then we have the prioress, prim and proper nun, named Eagleton. This question, PYQ, named Eagleton. She can sing the liturgy and speak French. She is a courtly lady, very fond of animals, cries even if she sees a mouse trap. ठीक है, जब वो एक माउस को ट्रैप्ड भी देख लेती हैं, and she is one such person who will wipe her lips after she is done eating. So she is very very, वो कहते हैं ना etiquette से भरी हुई, right? She takes great care to eat her food daintily, to reach food for on the table delicately, and to wipe her lip clean of grease before drinking from her cup. The narrator says that her features are pretty and she has an enormous forehead. She has an enormous forehead, and there is another nun and 3 priests who are accompanying her. This is important. This is important. And she is wearing a gold brooch. She wears over which you see that is written Amor Vincit Omnia. What does this word mean? This is a Latin word, Latin phrase which means love conquers all. Love conquers all. This is also a PYQ. So I don't expect any sort of missing things here, nor will I miss things, because I want you all to prepare nicely. But you should also start finding such facts, no? She wears an elegant cloak. Yeah, A for amor vincit omnia, meaning love conquers all in Latin. Let's just read something about the, prioress here now. There was a nun, a prioress, who was very simple and modest in her smiling. Her greatest oath was but by Saint Loy, and she was called Madame Eagleton. She sang the divine service very well. That means कि वो जो हम liturgy बोल रहे थे, वो liturgical चीजें बहुत अच्छे से sing कर लेती थी. Intoned in her nose in a very polite manner, and she spoke French very well and elegantly in the manner of Stratford at the Bow. What does that mean? That she spoke French. ये लिखा हुआ है ना, she spoke French in the manner of Stratford. It means that she spoke French in some sort of English accent. Accent English होता था, but बोलती वो French थी. At meals, she was well taught indeed. She let no morsel fall from her lips. This is a PYQ. एक भी morsel, एक भी निवाला, एक भी टुकड़ा, एक भी क्या कहते हैं ग्राइन जिसको बोलते हैं, वो अपने होठों से गिरने नहीं देती थी. She was so well mannered at the table, nor with her fingers dip in her sauce. She well knew how to carry a morsel to her mouth and take good care. एक टुकड़े को, एक निवाले को अपने मुंह तक कैसे लेके जाना है. She was very well mannered about that thing. And no drop of the sauce, etc., that she was dipping her morsel into maybe would fell on her breast का cloth. यहाँ पे कुछ भी नहीं गिरता था. In courtesy and greatest pleasure was in good manners. Right? Very pleasant, amiable. She took pains to imitate the manners of court and to be dignified in behavior. And she wanted to be considered worthy of reverence, कि उनको भी कोई respect दे, वो ऐसा चाहती थी, right? She was so charitable and so compassionate, she would weep if she saw a mouse caught in a trap. She would weep if she saw a mouse caught in a trap, if it were dead or bled. She had some small hounds that she fed. कुछ उनके पास खुद के पालतू हाउंड्स यानी कि डॉग्स भी रखे हुए थे उन्होंने, with which she, जिनको वो फीड करती थी with roasted meat or milk and fine bread. ये उस टाइम पे लोग मेजरली नहीं करते थे. तो this was one such thing which was happening at the prioress's place where she had kept certain hounds as at her domestic pets. ठीक है, as a domestic pet. She solely wept if one of them were dead. अगर उनमें से कोई एक भी मर जाता था तो वो रोने लग जाती, मतलब इतनी compassionate थी वो. And all was feeling tender heart. Her wimple was pleated in a seemly manner, her nose well formed, eyes grey as glass, mouth very small, moreover soft and red. This is the description of the nun, the prioress here, right? See here. And thereon hung a brooch on a very bright gold, on which there was first written A with a crown, and after that amor vincit omnia, which means love conquers all. She had another nun with her who was her secretary and 3 priests. So I hope I'm not making things difficult for you, because of course I am trying to read the general prologue जो मैंने आपको 2-3 दिन से होमवर्क दिया हुआ था, and I hope that आप लोग को अब समझ में आ रही हैं चीजें कि कैसे करनी है, हमें कैसे पढ़ना है. ठीक है. ठीक है. तो ये हमारी प्रायरस की डिस्क्रिप्शन हो गई. Then we move to the next character that we have. That's the monk. That's the monk here. monk के बारे में क्या लिखा है? Is the next pilgrim extremely handsome, loves hunting, keeps many horses. He looks after the monastery's business with the external world, and his horse's bridle can be heard jingling in the wind as clear as loud as a church bell. उसके जो हॉर्स के ऊपर भी उन्होंने कुछ लगाई हुई हैं बेल्स जिंगल करने के लिए, वो ऐसे जिंगल करती हैं जैसे चर्च की बेल्स जिंगल करती हैं, इतनी दूर से आवाज आ जाएगी ऐसा. He dismisses such strictures as worthless. कैसे strictures? The rule of monastic order discourages monks from engaging in any activities, but he does not want to behave like a monk. He is a monk, he behaves somewhere or the other like that, but जैसे monks को बोला जाता है that they cannot go for hunting, they cannot indulge their own selves in some sort of pleasures, he avoids that and he goes about doing his own thing, right, going for hunting and all, right? So the narrator says that he agrees with the monk. Why should the monk drive himself crazy with study or manual labor? ठीक है, तो मंक ने क्या पहना हुआ है? He also wears the tunic. He wears the tunic fringed with fur and a large gold love knot pinned at his neck. He has a plump face that shines like he has been anointed. Since riding and the hunting of the hare were all his love, hunting और riding जो horses है ये monk का प्यार है. For no cost would he spare. A love knot in the larger end there was. His head was bald. His head was bald and shone like any glass and smooth as one anointed was his face. कि उनका जो सर था वो इतना bald था, वो ऐसे चमक रहा था जैसे कोई glass हो. This is how he has described the monk. Then we have the friar. Then we have the friar. Friar, his name has been asked in the PYQ. Named Hubert. This is a PYQ. He was named Hubert, right? He was named Hubert, was jovial, खुश रहने वाला, खुश मिजाज वाला, pleasure loving and well spoken and socially agreeable. He lived entirely by begging alms, या beg करके ही जीते थे. He hears confessions क्योंकि he is a friar, so he will do the duty outside the church and will hear confessions of the people, right? So that he can assign them with easy penance, right? For this reason, he is very popular with wealthy landowners. Popular with wealthy landowners. Justifies his leniency by arguing that donating money to friars is a sign of true repentance. गलत बात, लेकिन of course he is doing that, and he is very popular with innkeepers and barmaids who give him food. We will read the lines for the friar, only then things will be clear. Let's just read the lines for the friar here. He is fond of women, ये भी लिख लो पहले, fond of women, keeps baubles in his hood to give to young ladies. No attention to beggars and lepers because they can't help him or his fraternal order. पैसे भी नहीं दे सकते एक तो फ्रायर को, इसलिए वो बेगर्स के ऊपर ज्यादा ध्यान नहीं देते. He is dressed in an expensive cloak. He is wearing an expensive cloak. Right? Let's move forward with the description of the monk. पहले पढ़ लेते हैं. There was a monk, an extremely fine one, an outrider, very many fine horses in his stable, and when he rode, one could hear his bridle. उसके घोड़ों की दुग 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 की आवाज दूर से सुन जाती थी क्योंकि उनके ऊपर भी बेल्स लगी हुई थी. ठीक है. Jingle in a whistling wind as clear and as loud as does a chapel bell. जैसे मैंने अभी बताया था कि जैसे चर्च की चैपल की बेल बजती है तो दूर से सुनाई देती है, उसी तरीके से the same way one could hear the jingling bells of the bridle of the horse that he was riding. Right? Nor that a monk, when he is heedless of rules, is like a fish that is out of water. Right? Then we have the friar. There was a friar, a pleasure-loving and a merry one, a limiter, a very solemn man. In all the four orders of friars, that no one knows so much of sociability and elegant speech. He had made very many a marriage of young women at his own cost. इसका मतलब क्या है कि उसने कई औरतों की शादी अपने पैसों से करवाई थी. That's why he was very famous with barmaids, right? And they used to offer him food and all because he has done these deeds as well. He was a noble supporter of his order, very well beloved and familiar was he. Very well beloved and familiar was he with landowners everywhere and also with worthy women of the town. Right? For he had power of confession and said himself more than a parish priest, कि मैं parish priest से ज़्यादा ताकत रखता हूँ. Right? For he was licensed by his order. He heard confessions very sweetly and his absolution was pleasant. He was a lenient man in giving penance. ठीक है, लोगों को मुक्ति देने के लिए, अपने पापों से दूर करवाने के लिए, क्योंकि confessions उनके दूर हो जाते हैं ना, तो he used to ask people for the money to give them penance, right? तो ये question आया हुआ था that who was the character who was really very famous in every bar and inn and bar. So it was the friar, right? ये चीज लिख लो. His neck was white as a lily flower. Furthermore, he was as strong as a champion fighter. This is the line that I also want you all to note. Wait. He knew the tavern in every town. Who knew the tavern in every town? ये चीज इसको लिखो इसके साथ. This person, he knew the tavern in every town. I want to take quizzes, but none of you come online here. Then I don't know how would that be possible. PYQs practice कराने हैं मुझे आप लोग को, लेकिन उसके लिए आप ऑनलाइन होगे तो ही तो क्वेश्चन प्रैक्टिस हो पाएंगे. Right? Then we move to the next character, the merchant. The merchant or the merchant is dressed in colorful clothes with a Flemish beaver hat. एक beaver hat पहनी हुई है इन्होंने, ठीक है, Flemish beaver hat. Nice boots he is wearing, right? And has a forked beard, मतलब उनकी beard जो है वो ऐसी fork जैसी है, ठीक है, तीखी तीखी beard है उनकी, right? He is good at borrowing money but clever enough to keep anyone from knowing that he is in debt. The narrator does not know his name. The narrator does not know his name. Nobody knows his name. The narrator also does not know the name of the monk who was there. The merchant who was there. Nobody knew his name, especially the narrator. And one more thing about him is this, that he was newly and unhappily married. He is newly and unhappily married. He is newly and unhappily married. There was a merchant with a forked beard, wearing parti colored clothes. Proudly he sat on his horse. Upon his head he wore a Flemish beaver hat. मैंने आप लोग को यही चीजें लिखवाई हैं. His boots were buckled handsomely and elegantly. His opinions he spoke of very solemnly concerning always the increase of his profits. He always talked about how successful he was, and he always wanted people to know that how successful he really was, that nobody really knew that this person was in debt. उनके पहनावे से, उनकी बातचीत से कोई भी ये अंदाजा नहीं लगा सकता था that of course this person is in debt, right? So nobody knew about that. He knew very well how to deal in foreign currencies. His worthy man employed his wit very well. There was no one who knew he was in debt. He was so dignified in managing his affairs, with buying and selling, and with his financial deals. Truly, he was a worthy man, but to say the truth, I do not know what men call him. That means I don't know what, and in the narrator somewhere or the other we see some sort of a regretful tone that the narrator does not know the name of the merchant here. The narrator does not know the name of the merchant here. विकास बच्चे एक बार आ जाना कभी भी बीच में 10, अगर आप रिकॉर्डेड सेशंस देखते हो आप 10-15 मिनट के लिए आ जाना any day if you have time, so that I just get to know that you are understanding whatever is being taught. Then we have the next person, the next character who is also asked in the NET examination. The clerk has also been asked in the NET examination. Clerk, a thin and threadbare student of philosophy at Oxford. इसकी जो lines लिखवाऊंगी उसको लिख लेना. That he is one such person who is a clerk of Oxford. ठीक है? Who devours books instead of foods. He loves to read books. The clerk of Oxford. Oxford से है तो पढ़ना लिखना पसंद होगा. So he loves reading books, right? But he has not been able to score, secure his position as a clergy or get any job, right? He speaks in a lively tone, enjoys teaching and learning. Pregnant of moral virtue was his speech, and gladly would he learn and gladly teach. These are the lines which have been asked in the NET examination as the PYQ. Who was one such person who would gladly learn and gladly teach? It was the clerk of Oxford. It was the clerk of Oxford. Let's just read about the clerk here. A clerk there was of Oxford also, who long before had begun the study of logic. His horse was lean as is a rake, and he was not very fat, I affirm, but looked emaciated and moreover abstemious. His short overcoat was very threadbare, कि वो कपड़े ही उसके ऐसे थे फटे फटे से कपड़े पहने हुए थे, threadbare था. For he had not yet obtained an ecclesiastical living, religious living में अभी तक he did not enter, nor he was worldly enough to take secular employment. For he would rather have the head of his bed 20 books bound in black or red. अपने बेड के पास 20 बुक्स होना उनके लिए बेहतर था. ठीक है. He loved, because he loved to read as well, of Aristotle and his philosophy, than rich robes or a fiddle or an elegant psaltery. So now उनको religion में जाने का ठीक है. He wanted to get a job, but he was very much content with having the books to read, having the philosophy to read, having the philosophy to study and learn. But even though he was a philosopher, nevertheless he had built little gold in his strong box, but all that he could get from his friends. He spent on books and learning. कुछ भी उसको जहां से भी मिलता था वो सिर्फ और सिर्फ अपने पढ़ने लिखने पे ही उस पे पैसे खर्च कर देते थे, बुक्स या पढ़ने के लिए. And diligently did pray for the souls of those who gave him the wherewithal to attend the schools. जिन्होंने उनको पैसे दिए थे to attend the schools and all, उनके लिए he would pray. He took most care and paid most heed to study, जैसे आप लोग को अभी करना चाहिए. He spoke not more one word than was needed, and was said with due formality and respect. And short and lively, full of elevated content, his speech was consonant with moral virtue, and gladly would he learn and gladly he would teach. Then we have the next character, the man of law. The man of law the man of law was an influential lawyer. The name itself is suggesting that he is a man of law. He is a lawyer. He is a wise character. He is a busy man. Takes care to appear even busier than he actually is. जैसे मर्चेंट जो है लोगों को पता नहीं लगने देता कि मेरे पास मैं डेट में हूँ, उसी तरीके से जो लॉयर है वो ये नहीं लोगों को दिखने देता कि ऑफ कोर्स वो ऐसे अपेयर होता कि मुझे बहुत काम है, मुझे बहुत काम है, आई एम रियली बिजी, राइट? He is a very wealthy landowner with an impeccable knowledge of the law. He wears colorful coat with a striped belt. This is a description of the man of law. इसकी यहीं से ही important है. जिन characters की through the prologue is important as well. I'm telling you that as well. ठीक है? तो उसको वहां से भी देख लेना. And एक बार तो मैंने बोला है कि prologue बैठ के पढ़ना ही पड़ेगा. तो अपने weekend पे पढ़ो, जैसे पढ़ना है. That's totally up to you. Then we have the next person, the Franklin. Then we have the Franklin, who is a white bearded landowner, loves fine food and drink. Hospitable host, अपने लोगों को जो गेस्ट्स आते हैं तो उसकी हॉस्पिटैलिटी बहुत अच्छी है, बहुत अच्छे से ट्रीट करते हैं अपने गेस्ट को, राइट? Keeps an array of fish and fowl on his grounds to serve to his guest. अपने टेबल के ऊपर उनके हमेशा ही फिश और बाकी चीजें पड़ी रहती हैं. As a feudal law, he has served as a sheriff, auditor, member of parliament. He wears an anlace, a two-edged dagger and a gypser on his belt. ये चीजें उन्होंने पहनी हुई होती है. This much only is important when it concerns the Franklin as well. Then we have the 5 guildsmen. Guildsmen क्या होते थे? Groups. ठीक है, तो 5 लोगों का ग्रुप है एक, right? Who are those people? The haberdasher, the carpenter, the weaver, the dyer, and the tapestry weaver. All are presented in a group. As a group, they are all dressed impressively in the manner of their specific guilds. Guilds होती थी पुराने टाइम पे, तो अगर आप किसी कोई वीवर हो तो आपके पहनावे से it used to show like that you are a weaver. If you are a tapestry weaver, if you are a haberdasher, so on and so forth. The narrator compliments their shiny dress and mentions that each was fit to be a city official. ठीक है, तो ये हमारे गिल्ड्समैन की डेफिनेशन दी हुई है by the narrator. Moving forward, we have a cook. With the entire guild, we have a cook whom Chaucer would praise fully were it not for the ulcer on his leg. तो उसके लेग के ऊपर जो है, कुक की लेग के ऊपर जो है एक बड़ा सा छाला हुआ है, ठीक है? And he used to boil chicken for the people, right? And he was one such person जो ये पी के बता देता था कि ये लंदन की एल यानी कि बियर है या नहीं. And we also have a name for the cook here. The cook has been named in the tale. His name is Roger. Roger is his name. He could tell the taste of London ale by drinking, और कुक था तो कुकिंग करता था, ठीक है. What was his masterpiece? His masterpiece was minced chicken in white sauce. White sauce में minced chicken पकाना, ये उनका बेस्ट डिश थी. बेस्ट डिश थी by the cook. Then we have the shipman. Then we have the shipman whose long gown was made of coarse cloth, and he keeps a dagger on a string around his neck. अपने neck के पास एक dagger जो है उसको टांग के रखते हैं, right? He drinks a lot of wine, जिस वजह से what he also does is that he steals. This shipman is morally corrupt. He steals wine from the merchant. जब merchant सो रहा होता है तो ये उसकी वाइन चुरा लेता है, ठीक है, क्योंकि इसको वाइन पीना भी पसंद है, तो ये वाइन चुरा लेता है, and is not terribly concerned with morality as long as he has the upper hand in the situation. Steals wine from the merchant, so no need to write what I had already written. And he is the shipman, the sailor. What is the name of the ship that he is riding? The name of the ship that he is riding is known as, the name of the ship that he is riding is Magdalene. Magdalene is the name of the ship that he is driving or riding, whatever you want to call it. He has the knowledge of the tides, he has the knowledge of the sea, he has the knowledge of the currents that are there in the sea. Because of course he is what? He is the shipman. Then we have the doctor of physic or the physician. He is a medical doctor, relies on astrology to diagnose his sick patients, works with apothecaries and prescribes drugs. Apothecaries के साथ ये काम करते हैं और drugs prescribe करते हैं, medicine that help him and the apothecaries turn a profit. तो वही medicine describe करते हैं जिससे ये profit कमा सके, and he has studied the work of all the famous doctors, does not spend much time studying the Bible. So religiously is not that good enough. Wears red and blue silk. And as we have seen that he wants to make most of the profit, that's why उन्होंने apothecaries के साथ भी kind of deal करी हुई है. So the narrator mocks him that the doctor's favorite medicine is what? The doctor's favorite medicine is gold. The doctor's favorite medicine is what? The doctor's favorite medicine is gold. And yet he was moderate in spending. He kept what he earned in times of plague, since in medicine gold is a restorative for the heart. For gold in physics is a cordial, therefore he loved gold in special. This is a PYQ. This here is a PYQ. Please note these two lines or highlight these lines wherever you are making your notes, that for gold in physique is a cordial, therefore he loved gold in special. Specially gold को बहुत प्यार करते थे. This is what has been said about the doctor of physique. Then we have another person here, the wife of Bath. How many of them are left here? The wife of Bath, Parson, Plowman, Miller, Reeve, Summoner, Post. कुछ ही रह गया, कर लेते हैं फटाफट से. Wife of Bath, skilled cloth maker, friendly, full of laughter, ruddy complexion, wears bright red stockings and large head dress. बहुत बड़ी head dress पहनी हुई है. She has a longer prologue than any of the other characters. She is a keen seamstress. That's why she is a skilled cloth maker. She had 5 husbands and has taken 3 pilgrimages to Jerusalem. ये question आया हुआ है. I'll show you the lines. I'll show you the lines. Please note it down. Please note this down. Her teeth had gaps. ये भी क्वेश्चन पूछा हुआ है. She is jolly, talkative and she had wide hip. ठीक है, ये भी लिख लो. She had wide hip. And she gives good love advice because she is what? She has had lots of experience. ये भी क्वेश्चन पूछा गया है. तो let me just mark the things which have been asked as a question. ये भी पूछा गया है. Her teeth had wide gaps, right? And then here as well, she had 5 husbands and she had been to 3 pilgrimages to Jerusalem, the Holy Land. Let's just read from here. And why is she been called the wife of Bath? Bath is a city in London. तो पूरे लंदन की वाइफ बना दिया. देखो चौसर ने इसको. That was so derogatory, but she has had 5 husbands. Through the experience that she has, she talks about those things, and the tale that she tells is really beautiful. ठीक है? A good wife of beside Bath, she was somewhat deaf and was a pity. तो थोड़ी सी deaf भी थी, ये भी add कर लो. She had such a skill in cloth. Please note this down that she was deaf. She surpassed them of Ypres and Ghent. In all the parish, there was no wife who should go to the offering before her. Her kerchiefs, that is the handkerchiefs, were very fine in texture. I dare swear they weighed 10 pounds. That on a Sunday were upon her head. Because Sunday को क्या होता है क्रिश्चियनिटी में? मास परफॉर्म होता है. जो लोग चर्च में जाते हैं, ठीक है, तो मास होता है ना, ठीक है. Her stockings were of fine scarlet red. Red stockings पहनी हुई थी, very closely laced, and her shoes were very supple and new. Bold was her face and fair, red of hue. She was a worthy woman all her life. Husbands at church, dots she had 5. These are the lines that I was saying. ये question पूछा गया है. She was a worthy woman all her life. Husband at church, doors she had 5. तो ये question ऐसे भी पूछा गया है that how many husbands did the wife of Bath have? She had had 5 husbands. Or who is the author, the narrator talking about in these lines in the Canterbury Tales? So note these lines. This is a PYQ. right? Moving forward, she had been at Rome, Boulogne, Galatia, and Cologne. She knew much about wandering the way. She had teeth widely spread apart, truly to say. So she had gap. She was a gap-toothed lady, gap-toothed woman. दांतों में गैप था उनके, वाइड. She had large hips, right, and on her feet a pair of sharp spurs. In fellowship, she well knew how to laugh and chatter. She knew as it happened about remedies of love, right? So उनको प्यार के बारे में भी बहुत कुछ पता था, and the tale that she will tell because of her own experience, तो वो भी बड़ी मजेदार होगी. For she knew the old dance of that art. Of that art, what art? Of the art of love. उनको पुराने चीजें पता थी प्यार के बारे में कि क्या कैसे होता है. ठीक है. एंड वाइफ ऑफ बाथ डेफ क्यों हो गई थी? ये चीज भी इंपॉर्टेंट है. वो डेफ इसलिए हो गई थी क्योंकि उनके हस्बैंड ने, जो फिफ्थ हस्बैंड था आई थिंक, उन्होंने उनको चांटा मारा था, तो उस वजह से उनकी शी गॉट डेफ, राइट? शी बिकेम डेफ. Then we have the next one here, the parson, the wife of Bath. Then we have the parson, a gentle and a poor village parson, pure of conscience, मतलब morally सही है, true to the teachings of Christ, right? Hates excommunicating those who cannot pay their tithe. Tithe क्या होता था? लैंड टैक्स होता था. तो इनको अच्छा नहीं लगता था कि उन लोगों को एक्सकम्युनिकेट कर देना, रिलीजन से बाहर निकाल देना या कुछ कर देना, अगर वो अपना लैंड टैक्स नहीं पे कर पाते थे. ठीक है. तो पार्सन वाज अ वेरी नाइस गाय. ही डिड नॉट लाइक दैट उनको एक्सकम्युनिकेट करना पड़ता है लोगों को जो अपने टिथ जो है, अपने टैक्सेस जो लैंड टैक्सेस है वो पे नहीं कर पाए. ही बिलीव्स दैट अ प्रीस्ट मस्ट बी प्योर because he serves as an example for his congregation, his flock. The parson is dedicated to his parish and does not seek a better appointment. जो है वही रहना चाहते हैं. He does not want to change his job. He does not want to change what he is. He is even kind to sinners to teach them by example rather than scorn. तभी तो पार्सन की टेल जो है वो एक एग्जाम्पलम थी ना, जो हमने कल जब टर्म्स कर रहे थे तो उसमें एग्जाम्पलम थी. पार्डनर की थी वो. ठीक है. द पार्सन इज वन ऑफ द ओनली मॉरल क्लर्जी कैरेक्टर इन द कैंटरबरी टेल्स. ओनली मॉरल क्लर्जी कैरेक्टर. लेट्स जस्ट रीड अबाउट द पार्सन हियर नाउ. A good man was there of religion, and he was a poor parson of a town, but he was rich in holy thought and work. प्योर सोचने पे और प्योर काम करने पे यकीन करने वाले थे. He was also a learned man, a scholar, who would preach Christ's gospel truly. He would devoutly teach his parishioners. He was gracious and wonderfully diligent and very patient in adversity. For such he was proven many times. He was very reluctant to excommunicate for the non-payment of the tithes, but rather would he give, there is no doubt, unto his poor parishioners about some of his offering that he received at mass and also some of his income. तो उन लोगों को दे देते थे. He knew how to have sufficiency in few possessions, कि थोड़ी चीज में गुजारा कैसे करना है उनको पता था. His parish was wide and houses far apart, but he did not omit for rain nor thunder, in sickness or in trouble, to visit those living farthest away in his parish, high ranking and low. सबको मिलके आते थे, चाहे धूप हो, सर्दी हो, तूफान आ रहा हो, जहां इनको अपनी ड्यूटी करनी होती थी, वहां he used to be present. To the high ranking people or the low, going by foot and in his hand a staff. Staff मतलब एक डंडा, उनके हाथ में एक डंडा भी होता था, ये भी लिख लो प्लीज. He gave this noble example to his sheep, that first he wrought and afterward he taught. He took those words out of the gospel, and this metaphor he added also to that if gold rust, what must iron do? This is something that you need to note down. कि अगर गोल्ड रस्ट हो जाता है तो आयरन क्या करेगी, आयरन उसमें क्या कर सकती है. फॉर इट इज अ प्रीस्ट टू बी फाउल ऑन whom we trust. It is no wonder for a layman to go bad, कि सबसे गलतियां होती हैं, सब sinners होते हैं, and it's a shame if a priest is concerned, a shit-stained shepherd and a clean sheep. Well, ought a priest to give an example by his purity how his sheep would live. यहाँ पे वो sheep किसको signify कर रहे हैं, अपने लोगों को, अपने subjects को बोलने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि तुमको कैसे live करना चाहिए, ठीक है. He did not rent out his benefice and leave his sheep encumbered in the mire, right, and run to London and to St. Paul's to seek an appointment as the chantry priest, or to be hired by a guild, but dwelt at home and kept well his sheep fold. अपने लोगों के साथ रहना ही पसंद करते थे, इधर उधर जाना उनको for some other jobs नहीं पसंद था. So that the wolf did not make it wrong, he was a shepherd and not a hireling, and though he was holy and virtuous, he was not scornful of sinful men. जो sins करते थे लोग, उनको scorn करने वालों में से he was not that. Nor domineering, nor haughty in his speech, but in his teaching courteous and kind. Courteous भी थे अपने teachings में, kind भी थे. By good example, this was his business, unless it were an obstinate person. Obstinate मतलब कोई stubborn या ढीठ इंसान ही होगा, तो उस इंसान को समझाने के लिए, right, unless ऐसा इंसान है वो लोगों को sins को माफ करवाने के लिए, he used to do that. He would rebuke him sharply at that time. अगर वो ऑब्स्टिनेट पर्सन है, चाहे वो हाई या लो रैंक का है, चाहे वो स्टबर्न ढीठ इंसान हाई रैंक का या लो रैंक का है, he would try to, rebuke him sharply at that time. I believe that nowhere is there a better priest. He expected no pomp and ceremony. ना उनको pompous चीजें पसंद थी, ना उनको अपनी बढ़ाई चढ़ाई के लिए, ना ही he needed any sort of ceremony, nor he made himself an overly fastidious conscience, but Christ's teaching and his 12 apostles would do for him. He taught, but first he followed it himself. ठीक है, कि क्राइस्ट की टीचिंग जो थी और उनके जो 12 apostles थे, उनको ये पढ़ाना पसंद करते थे, लेकिन उससे पहले he felt that he should, हम कहते हैं ना, better ऐसा होता है, if you practice what you preach. He was a live example of that. He would practice what he used to preach. He used to practice the 12 apostles की teachings and the teachings of Christ, because he used to teach them as well, right? So that's that. That's about the parson. Then we have the next character here as the plowman. The parson is accompanied by his brother a plowman, who works hard, loves God and is his neighbor. His neighbor labors for Christ's sake and pays his tithes on time. अब पार्टनर का भाई कौन है? प्लाउमैन. ठीक है, वो भी भगवान को पसंद करता है, right? He is a hard worker, religious man. He wears a plain sleeveless garment made for farm work and he rides a mare. Horse and mare हमने पता है ना, तो mare को ride करते हैं. He rides a mare. ये छोटू छोटू नोट्स बना लोगे ना, बहुत आप लोग के रिवीजन के टाइम पे काम आने वाले हैं. आई एम नॉट सेइंग नोट डाउन द एंटायर पैराग्राफ्स, नो, दैट इज नॉट हाउ यू शुड बी मेकिंग नोट्स. आते हैं यहाँ पे रीड करने के लिए अबाउट द प्लाउमैन. With him there was a plowman who was his brother, who had hauled very many a cartload of dung. He was a true and a good worker, living in peace and perfect love. He loved God. He loved God best with all his whole heart at all times, whether it pleased or pained him. चाहे कुछ चीजें उनको दुख पहुंचा रही थी, चाहे कुछ चीजें उनको हैप्पीनेस दे रही थी. सो इन हैप्पीनेस एंड इन सॉरो at both the times he used to love and pray God, right? And then he loved his neighbor exactly as his own self. He would thresh and moreover make ditches and dig. वो नीचे गड्ढे खोदते थे because he was a farmer, hard worker. For Christ's sake, for every poor person without payment if it lay in his power. He paid his tithes full on time, completely and well, both of his labor and of all his possessions. तो अपनी टिथ को टाइम पे देते थे. इन द टबार्ड he rode upon a mare and wore a sleeveless jacket. Tabard, there was also a reeve and a miller, a summoner and a pardoner also, a manciple and myself. There were no more. Right? So now we are going to talk about the miller, then the summoner and the other participants, the people, pilgrims who are left. So coming back here again, we have other people. The miller, हमने मिलर की टेल जो फैब्लो थी कल पढ़ी थी ना. तो मिलर is a large stout man who can easily break down a door with his head. Red beard and hairy wart on the end of his nose. What are warts? बड़े से जो तिल होते हैं. So he had a hairy wart at the end of his nose. He enjoys telling bawdy stories. He is known for putting his thumb on the scale when he weighs out the grain. So that जो ग्रेन, जो अब आप थंब अपना एक ग्रेन के वेट पे लगा दोगे तो वो थंब का भी तो भार आता है ना. तो वो इस तरीके से, तभी तो जो रीव होता है वो मिलर की टेल सुनाता है जब, तभी वो उसको मॉक करता है. बिकॉज द मिलर हियर हिमसेल्फ इज समवन हु इज इमोरल, अनएथिकल. ठीक है. ही इज ड्रेस्ड इन अ व्हाइट कोट विद अ ब्लू हुड एंड एंजॉयज प्लेइंग द बैगपाइप्स. फ्लूट बजाना किसको पसंद था? फ्लूट बजाना पसंद था हमारे जो स्क्वायर थे उनको. बैगपाइप पसंद बजाना किसको पसंद है? द मिलर. राइट? The miller. So whenever he is weighing the grain, he would put his thumb up to weigh things more and grain कम जाती थी और thumb के भार की वजह से जो भी wheat या grain कोई भी जाती थी वो कम चली जाती थी. Right? So this is what he used to do. Then we have the next character, the manciple, is in charge of making purchases for a temple or a law school. Not an educated man, but he is intelligent. Intelligent है, educated नहीं है. Good at waiting for prices to come down before he purchases anything, which is a very good move. पहले prices कम आएंगे तो चीजें खरीदते थे ताकि loss पे खरीद के profit पे बेच दे. He stalks an inn of court with provisions. Uneducated though he is, this manciple is smarter than most of the lawyers he serves. Right? So he is a smart guy. He is a smart guy. We are left with only 4 characters. Then we have the reeve. Then we have the reeve. Reeve is a thin, irritable man with a closely shaved beard. He has a closely shaved beard, trained carpenter. And that is why when the miller tells a tale of a carpenter or a reeve, तो पहले miller tale बताता है about the reeve and then the reeve gets offended. तो वो miller के बारे में tale बताता है जो हमने कल 2 fabulous करे थे. Right? But he manages an estate for a lord whom he has tricked and cheated for years. He wears a dark blue coat and carries a rusty sword as he rides his dappled grey horse. He is always the last rider in their group. He is always the last rider in their group. So we have done yesterday the tales of the miller. Reeve miller की tale सुनाता है miller को mock करते हुए, क्योंकि मिलर ने रीव यानी कि कारपेंटर के मॉकरी में जो जॉन एंड एलिसन एंड निकोलस वाली टेल, एब्सलम वाली टेल हमने देखी थी ना, दैट देयर विल बी अ फ्लड दैट विल कम, वो मिलर एक कारपेंटर के बारे में बताता है. देन द रीव दैट इज द कारपेंटर टॉक्स अबाउट अ टेल अबाउट द the miller, and how he tries to talk about the 2 students who have come, जिनको पता चलता है कि एक मिलर एक टाउन में रहता है एंड वो लोगों से ग्रेन्स जो है वो छुपा लेता है, स्टील कर लेता है उनको सेल करते टाइम या पिसवाते टाइम. ठीक है. देन द नेक्स्ट कैरेक्टर इज द समनर. He is a man of the church, summons people who have committed crimes. He is covered in pimples and eyelids are swollen. As a result of skin disease, his hair have fallen out and he is fond of garlic, onions, leeks and strong wine. When he gets drunk, he speaks only in Latin and he is a lecherous man who has been known to swindle people. लोगों को पागल बनाने में, भड़काने में, he has been known very famously for that thing. Right? So with the summoner, then we have the pardoner who is the friend of the summoner. Then we have the pardoner who is the summoner's friend. He sells indulgences to people so that they can be pardoned from their sins. There are multiple videos on YouTube for the Canterbury Tales animated version. You can watch those videos to keep a track of if you memorize things through visual representation. So, आप उन videos को देख सकते हो. You can watch the wife of Bath's tale. You can watch the pardoner's tale, right? Which is about the three men that we were talking about in yesterday's class. कि तीन friends जो होते हैं who are in the search of death. And when they ask the old man who is passing by, the old man कहता है कि आपको पेड़ के नीचे death मिलेगी. लेकिन when they reach, they find gold there and then they plot to kill one another and killing में तीनों ही मर जाते हैं. And then it is the moral of the story turns out to be कि जो भी इंसान greedy होता है, लोभी होता है, उसका end जो होता है, it is just like that. So he sells indulgences, ये story सुनाते हैं people and he makes people kiss the relics of the martyrs and all. So all those things are beautifully shown there, right? His long greasy hair is yellow as a wax, right? And he wears no hood in order to show off. His wallet is full of all the money he has collected. And his high voice and lack of beard leads the narrator to believe that he may be a eunuch. He may be a eunuch. And he is one such person who has a collection of relics with his own self. Relics क्या होता है? जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल जैसे लॉर्ड बुद्धा के कुछ relics रह गए हैं, ठीक है, तो कुछ भी भगवान के छुई हुई चीजें या कुछ भी छोटी मोटी चीजें जो होती हैं which have some sort of religious meaning associated with them and are treated with that much respect and reverence, those are known as relics. तो लोगों को वो relics को किस करने देते हैं so that they can be pardoned from their sins and all. And he also has a pillowcase which he asserts is, he has a pillowcase which he asserts is, क्या है वो pillow का veil? He says that it is Our Lady's veil. ठीक है, Our Lady's veil. Veil क्या होता है? घूंघट टाइप्स. So what is Our Lady's veil? Virgin Mary जो थी, when she was giving birth to Jesus, it is said that she was wearing some sort of veil on her head. That is what he calls as the pillowcase is what? It is Our Lady's veil, right? Then we have the last one for today. What's the time? It's about 2. All right. So then we have the last person who is considered to be our host, whose name is Harry Bailey, right? Whose name is Harry Bailey. Just wait for a second. All right. So he comes up with the idea. और कौन idea लेके आता है कि tales सब सुनाएंगे? Harry Bailey, who's the host of the inn where all the pilgrims meet one another, right? Where all the people meet one another. So Canterbury Tales were supposed to be 120 stories, but only 24 were completed. सिर्फ 24 टेल्स ही कंप्लीट हो पाई थी, सिर्फ 24 टेल्स ही कंप्लीट हो पाई थी, राइट? पोएट्री की तरह इसको कंसिडर करा जाता है. 2 टेल्स आर रिटन इन प्रोज और नॉन पोएटिक राइटिंग विद नो मीटर. एंड वो कौन सी टेल्स है? मैंने आपको ये बोला था कि दिस इज अ PYQ. देयर आर 2 टेल्स which are written in prose. The tale of Melby and the Parson's Tale, they are not written in the poetry ka format, rather they are written in the form of prose. 2 tales are in prose. And then there's this retraction by Chaucer. रिट्रैक्शन की मैंने कैंटरबरी टेल्स में कुछ भी अनाप शनाप कुछ भी गलत बोल दिया हो, कुछ भी वल्गर हो, तो प्लीज भगवान के लिए मुझे माफ कर देना, मेरे सिंस के लिए भी तुम लोग माफी मांग लेना. लेट्स जस्ट रीड दैट रिट्रैक्शन फास्टली थोड़ा. Now I pray to them all that listen to this little treatise or read it, that if there be anything in that pleases them, that thereof they thank our Lord Jesus Christ, from whom proceeds all wit and all goodness. Jesus Christ को प्रणाम करना चाहिए. We should thank Jesus Christ if any person who reads these tales likes them, finds them good and all. And if there be anything that displeases them, I pray them also that they blame it on the fault of my lack of wit and not to my will. कि मैंने ये जानबूझ के नहीं लिखा है, मेरे को समझ नहीं थी, मैंने ना समझी में लिखा है, उसको सोच के माफ कर देना. That would much prefer to have said better if I had cunning. अगर मैं थोड़ा चालाक होता तो मैं उसको और अच्छे तरीके से लिख सकता था, but because of the lack of wit, अगर किसी को ये tales displease करती हैं, then please give me some sort of leverage दे दो एक हिसाब से, मुझे भूल चुक में माफ कर दो. For our book says, all that is written for our doctrine, and that is my intent. Wherefore I beseech you meekly for the mercy of God, that you pray for me, that Christ have mercy on me, and forgive me for my sins, and namely for my translations or compositions of worldly vanities, as is the book of Troilus, the book of Fame, the book of XXV. XXV here, he means to talk about the legend of the women. Ladies, the book of the Duchess, the book of Saint Valentine's, Day of the Parliament of the Birds, the Tales of Canterbury, those that tend towards sin, जो भी sin की तरफ जा रही हैं, the book of Lion and many other book, if there were in my remembrance, and many a song and many a lecherous lyric, that Christ for his great mercy forgive me the sin. I also pray that Christ forgives me for the sin if I had used any sort of displeasing language, any sort of displeasing idea. But of the translation of Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy and other books of the legends of saint, and homages, and morality and devotion, that thank our Lord Jesus Christ and his blissful mother and all the saints of heaven, beseeching them that from henceforth unto my life's end, send me grace to bewail my sins and to study the salvation of my soul. बाकी बुक्स जैसे बीथस की कॉन्सोलेशन ऑफ फिलोसफी मैंने लिखी है, ट्रांसलेट करी है, और अदर ट्रांसलेशंस जो मैंने रिलीजियस टोन्स में रिलीजियस थीम्स वाली करी हैं, उसमें मैं भगवान से दया मांगता हूँ कि ऑफ कोर्स वो मुझे उस चीज के लिए भी मेरे सिंस को माफ करें आगे चल के, राइट, एंड मुझे मुक्ति, साल्वेशन दे. confession and satisfaction to do in this present life, through the benign grace of Him, that is the God, that is the King of Kings and Priest of all priests, that brought us within the precious blood of His heart, so that we may all be one of them at the day of the doom, that shall be saved. Quicem patriat Spiritu Santo vivit et rantet Deus per omnia secula. That he says, this is in Latin. He says, He who lives and reigns within the Father and the Holy Spirit, God, world without end. Amen. Here is ended the book of the Tales of the Canterbury, compiled by Geoffrey Chaucer, of whose soul Christ may have mercy. Amen. Right? So this is the retraction that he wrote, and इसमें ही उन्होंने जो भी अपनी पुरानी बुक्स हो गई, अपनी ट्रांसलेशंस हो गई, उनके बारे में इन्होंने बात कर दी कि अगर मैं से कहीं में भी भूल चुक हुई हो, retraction is like that only. So he wrote the retraction, which is also known by another term, that is a palinode. ठीक है, तो ये हम लोग का हो गया. अब आप लोग को होमवर्क दे रही हूँ, ये कल ही आप पढ़ के आएंगे. I'm going to give you the homework for the contemporaries of Chaucer. We have ये रिविजन करके आओगे आप टेल्स को. ठीक है, आपका होमवर्क में टेल्स जो हैं उनको रिवाइज करके आओगे आप एक बार के लिए. ठीक है, सेकेंडली यू विल ऑल्सो डू लैंगलैंड का पायर्स द प्लाउमैन की समरी. पायर्स द प्लाउमैन, इसकी समरी यू विल रीड. ठीक है, ये होमवर्क है आपका 4 जनवरी 2024. ठीक है, पायर्स द प्लाउमैन. देन गावर के 3 वर्क्स हैं. देन वी हैव गावर का, ये लैंगलैंड का हो गया. गावर के 3 वर्क्स हैं, 3-4 वर्क्स हैं. स्पेक्युलम मेंदांतिस, इसका तो इनका थोड़ा ही होगा, तो उतना ही पढ़ के आना है. Speculum Medantis, I got the document uploaded, I think, on the application, which is by the name Chaucer's Contemporaries. You can go through that as well. Vox Clemantis, and then we have Confessio Amantis. These are the works. ठीक है, इनमें से ये जो है ये फ्रेंच में लिखा गया है. ठीक है, Vox Clemantis is written in Latin and this work is written in English. Tomorrow we will cover the contemporaries. We will finish the entire thing. We will try to finish the entire thing, and then Monday को एक क्विज होगा on Chaucer and Age of Revival. कल थोड़ा सा स्टार्ट करके हिस्ट्री देख लेंगे. ठीक है, सो एज ऑफ रिवाइवल तो छोटी सी एज है, उसमें हमारे पास ज्यादा राइटर्स नहीं है. सो वी विल कवर देम ऑन मंडे एंड ट्यूसडे में एज ऑफ रिवाइवल खत्म हो जाएगी अलोंग विद द क्विज ऑन रिवाइवल एंड चॉसर. ठीक है, सो ये चीजें आपको कल के लिए करके आनी है. ठीक है, so thank you so much and have a good day. Please come reading these things. Bye bye.